Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to RimWorld Ye Olde Knights, episode 14. Today, I bring you a tale of conquest and bloodshed, my friends. But before we get to conquering and murdering everyone, something I want to do first is make some allies in this world. Now, I realize the idea of this series is going to be to try and conquer all the other factions. However, I think the other factions right now, especially the Outlanders that we stole and destroyed one of their settlements from them previously, are kind of inclined to help us out in our war. So I sent out a caravan to offer them some weapons and armor to hopefully make an ally out of them. And lucky for me, it seems to have worked. We are now allies with the local Outlander settlement, and we could do some trading with them. That was one of the biggest hindrances as well, is we couldn't trade with everyone because everyone hated us. So now we finally have an ally to trade with. Because it's going to be a little hard to fund a war against the Empire if we don't have anyone to sell all the things that we take off of the Rangers' corpses and things like that. We have so much power armor and flak armor and stuff, but nobody to sell it to, so I'm glad we're finally buddies with the Outlanders and they can buy all our trash. Our very first trade caravan yielded a nice weapon for Shark to wield. It was a bandit's hammer, but it was somewhat legendary and had a much better DPS than the previous warhammers we were using. But we also ended up deciding to go ahead and dig into the mountain a bit more to make some more room for our keep, as we would have some new members joining us very shortly. It took a little while, but we finally got that mined out, and then, unfortunately, all of our colonists basically ended up catching fibrous mechanites, some type of odd mechanical sorcery from the Empire, no doubt, some type of curse they've put on us. But this mechanical sorcery will not slow us down at all. We finally ended up recruiting our first ranger that we had held hostage, named Ant. Ant would be a wonderful addition to the new guild that we are going to give to Lagua. I still don't have a name for the new guild just yet, but I'm going to give them steel encased armor and those steel death masks with some royal plated gloves to keep them very protected. I think I'm going to call them the Reapers Guild or the Reapers for now. If you guys have better suggestions, please let me know. Now, to really start us off though with the bloodshed this episode, we had a man-hunting group of megasloths. Now, normally we'd just let them come through our murder hallway, and they kind of started doing that, but I decided to take out the Reapers with Lagua and the King and Queen so they could test their mettle. And they stood no chance against our Reapers. Well, really it's because they were already severely injured from the murder hallway, but that's okay. And then, as if on cue, as is tradition here, we had a mech cluster drop nearby because, well, we always have mech clusters dropping on this map. But in some good news, we ended up recruiting our last prisoner that we had hostage in our prison, and they would now join the Reapers Guild along with the others. And now with the House of Rat at full power, with a small Reapers Guild and a fully stocked Black Knights Guild, we decided to plan our very first raid on an Imperial settlement. And naturally, to start us off with our raids and our war against the Imperial settlements, we decided to start with a smaller settlement that they had, because a larger one would most likely end up in the eradication of the House of Rat. So every living soul that we had in the House of Rat gathered at the border, and they set their sights on this small Imperial settlement. And then it took a little while to get there, but shortly after arriving, we realized even though this was a small settlement, it was still pretty big, and they still had a lot of mortars and turrets. But that would not deter us from slaughtering these Imperials. We fired upon them to try and get them to attack us so we could go around the mountain and we would have a good vantage point to fire at them. We also fired a rocket at some explosive pots to try and kill a few of them while they followed us. We attempted to strafe around the southern part of the small hill to try and get away from them, but unfortunately King George was overwhelmed by rangers and cataphracts and was pinned to the ground. The others fought like hell to try and get away so they could regroup and get back to him. The battle was extremely chaotic. We had bullets whizzing by our heads every moment. It was extremely dangerous for our nobility, but they hung right in there. We were throwing grenades and crushing people's skulls with our hammers. Unfortunately, during the chaos of battle, we ended up losing our Black Knight of Bruno, and we ended up losing Kale. They both served the Black Knights Guild very well as the Crown. But we could not let their sacrifices go in vain. We had to continue battling on. We must take this Imperial settlement. We circled back around to the eastern part of the small hill, that way we could get to the king and begin tending to his wounds so he wouldn't bleed out on the battlefield, and so we could retreat from the Imperials who were also retreating. We ended up sending in our Reapers and a few of the Black Knights Guild along with Newton to try and take out the remaining gun turrets so we could begin taking the settlement for ourselves. And just like that, we had done it. We had finally defeated our first Imperial settlement. Though it was a small settlement, it was still an Imperial settlement and highly defended. We ended up taking all their goodies, but the cost of winning was extremely high. The price we have paid for victory. After a little while, we finally made it back home, and our nobility took a very long, solemn walk all the way back to the keep. Some of us were carried with oxygen in our lungs, some were carried without. Shortly after returning home, some of our nobility had infections. We should be able to treat this with ease though, because we do have the best medicine on the planet. Now that everyone was getting back settled in, it was time for Lagua and Gaborka to begin building our sarcophagi for our fallen heroes. Heroes who did not fear death, they did not go quietly into that long, dark good night. They fought valiantly, bravely, and other awesome synonyms on the battlefield that day, and they saved many lives. They will not be forgotten. And not to mention how many of those filthy Imperial scum they took down with them. We of course began laying our heroes to rest next to their fallen brethren. A somber, quiet place for them to live out the rest of their eternal lives, next to those who have also earned such a beautiful place to lay. Our heroes were so highly honored, in fact, the king and queen planned their funerals individually themselves. The queen would say words for one of our fallen heroes at her funeral, and the king would say some words for the other fallen hero at her funeral. And it was all quite beautiful. Rest now, our fallen friends, for your debt to the crown has been paid, and your service will not be forgotten. But a little bit of time later, after we began moving on from our fallen heroes, we decided to go ahead and build a signal fire. I didn't really know what mod to go with here, so I ended up downloading the Tribal Signal Fire Continue mod. That way we could try and communicate with our enemies as well as our allies if we were to need like a military aid or anything like that, or trade caravans. Because the next time the Empire strikes, we must be ready. Sometime later, Weaves was kind enough to make some beautiful art for the casket of a Bruno, as is tradition here when someone passes away. The art had a depiction of Weaves playing poker in a village by a grassland. I'm not sure what it means, but I'm sure it's beautiful. Our Black Knight Lantabar also made a beautiful sculpture for Kale's grave that told the story of Lantabar defeating an enemy stronghold. A true sentiment. But unfortunately, not long after that, just as I had suspected, the Empire came to strike us back for what we had done to their settlement. There were many Imperial Rangers and cataphracts, and I had considered calling for military aid just in case, but thankfully they came into the side of the territory that was nearest to the massive mech cluster that had dropped, so the two began battling with each other. And from our keep you could hear the roaring of miniguns and the blazing fires that were going on, all as the rain fell. You could hear the high-pitched squeals from the pikemen, the lancers. The Empire ended up gaining the upper hand on the mech cluster. Maybe it's because they didn't care to sacrifice many of their men in melee combat against the auto turrets, knowing they would explode. But the Empire's lack of compassion for human life and their very own troops will inevitably be their downfall. The few troops that had survived began marching on our keep. Luckily for us though, and unfortunately for them, we began firing massive chunks of rock at them with our catapults, and all of our men were standing ready by our barricades. Many of the Imperial soldiers actually made it out of the murder hallway alive, and then we opened fire upon them with a hail of gunfire hitting them. They turned into Swiss cheese and then quickly a puddle of blood and goop on the ground. Some of the other Rangers that were attempting to flee decided that they would try and break through the doors of the murder hallway and try to make it out. All of our soldiers were standing there ready, and I got a really good shot of our soldiers all just shooting and then stopped shooting because they had killed everyone that was trying to come out, which was really cool. After defeating all of the Imperial soldiers, there was one cataphract left who was trying to escape with his life to go and tell the Empire what had happened here today. But unfortunately, I could not allow that to happen, so we sent out our 3 Reapers and they began firing upon him up until the point that they began melee attacking him with their massive swords. He managed to down one of them, but inevitably he fell, just as the rest of the Empire shall. Unfortunately, anytime we receive these raids or we raid the Empire, most of the people have the death acidifiers on them, so they end up destroying the weapons and armor that they have. That is not always the case, and thankfully today we ended up getting a few charge rifles, a minigun, a mono sword, some interesting gear that will be very useful for the future. And finally, to finish off that filthy freaking mech cluster, we sent Brex down with her rifle to begin firing upon it up until the point that it was destroyed and it fell to pieces at her feet. I have something big planned for Brex in the future, maybe some type of honorable warrior role or something. Let me know what you guys think about that. The Queen's armor was actually destroyed in battle, so Weaves made her a nice new pair of armor that kind of resembles the King's. Now they could match. Oh, how sweet. Truly a noble pair of armor. Anyhow, though, we ended up creating a new holiday to celebrate the first time we finally defeated an Imperial settlement. With all those filthy Imperials laying dead on the battlefield, I thought maybe we should best call it Blood of Imperials. I know, very catchy, right? The date for the holiday would actually be set on the same day we defeat the settlement, even though we finally defeated their retaliation forces today. This is a massive milestone in our true goal of dominating this planet and all those who inhabit it. We wish to give them a free and peaceful land and planet to live on, even though it doesn't sound like it with us talking about dominating the planet. Listen, yeah, I mean dominate and then give them a peaceful life. You know, don't worry about the details. We'll figure that out later about democracy and things like that. But I would like to thank you all very, very much for watching RimWorld Ye Olde Knights episode 14. You guys are very, very awesome. I really appreciate you guys. Thank you so much for watching, honestly. Let me know what you guys think about what we should do for Brex. I don't know if I want to give Brex like a leader role, like with kind of like Lagua and Shark. I wasn't really thinking of doing that. I was thinking of maybe for all of our nobility, except for like our leaders like Lagua and Shark, and then their guild members, so the Reapers and the Black Knights Guild. So basically, you know, like Lumi, Galro, Newton, Brex, people like that, who we haven't really done anything with so far. I thought about maybe trying to collect up enough plasteel, if we can, to give them some really dope-ass armor, give them some really good weapons, like a minigun. I thought of giving Brex some really dope-ass plasteel armor with a minigun. And, you know, she doesn't have to have, like, a title or anything like that, obviously, but just something really cool like that to show our appreciation. We've never really gave our nobility too much, and when we do, it's, like, one person. So, like, Lumi, or, you know, like, Shark, and stuff like that. So I kind of want to show some love to, like, everybody else if we can. If you guys have some ideas for that, though, be sure to let me know. And once again, thank you for watching. I hope to see you next time. Goodbye.